It was a bitterly cold night in downtown Chicago. The kind of night where the wind seemed to cut straight through even the thickest coats. The sidewalks were mostly empty, except for a few passing cars and those who had nowhere else to go. Among them was Henry, a homeless man in his late 50s, sitting quietly near the entrance of a closed bakery, clutching an old blanket tightly around his shoulders. It wasn't much, but it was the only thing standing between him and the freezing air. Henry had been living on the streets for nearly 6 years. Once a hard-working mechanic, life had spiraled downward after his wife died in a car crash and the medical bills left him broke. Grief consumed him, and one misstep led to another until he found himself alone, without a job, a home, or hope. But even in his suffering, Henry had never let go of his kindness. That night, as the city grew quieter and the cold grew harsher, Henry noticed someone stumbling down the sidewalk. A young man, maybe in his early 20s, wearing only a light hoodie and jeans. His face was pale, and he looked lost, both physically and emotionally. Henry watched as the young man sat down on the concrete a few feet away, shivering uncontrollably. "Hey, kid," Henry said softly, shifting closer. "You all right?" The young man looked up, startled. "No," he whispered. I just lost everything. I don't even know what I'm doing." Henry could see the pain in his eyes. It was the same look he had seen in the mirror years ago. Without another word, he stood up, walked over, and draped his only blanket over the young man's shoulders. The young man tried to resist. "No, I can't take this. You need it more than me." But Henry smiled gently. "Tonight, you need it. I've had worse nights. You'll be all right." And just like that, the two sat there in silence. The young man eventually leaned back against the wall, his shivering lessening as he wrapped the blanket tighter. Henry, now sitting with only his old hoodie, crossed his arms and stared at the stars, silently praying for the boy next to him. The night dragged on slowly. Henry barely slept. He checked on the young man several times, making sure he was still warm. It was strange, he had almost nothing, yet giving his blanket away felt like the most natural thing in the world. As the first light of morning broke over the horizon, Henry stretched his aching limbs and looked over. The young man was gone. The blanket was neatly folded and placed beside him, along with a small note. Henry picked it up, rubbing his tired eyes to read the messy handwriting. "Thank you. You saved me. I'll never forget what you did." Henry smiled faintly. He folded the note and tucked it into his jacket pocket. Maybe the kid had somewhere to go now. That was enough. He didn't expect anything more. He never had. Later that morning, as Henry walked down the street looking for somewhere to warm up, he noticed a black car pulling over near him. A man in a suit stepped out and approached him. "Are you Henry?" the man asked politely. Henry hesitated. "Yeah. Who's asking?" The man smiled and extended his hand. "My name is Mark. I work for Thomas Whitaker. He's the CEO of Whitaker Industries." Henry looked confused. "Why would a CEO be looking for me?" "Mr. Whitaker's son met you last night," Mark replied. "He told his father everything. Your kindness. Your sacrifice. Your story moved him." Henry's eyes widened. "The kid, he's Mr. Whitaker's son?" Mark nodded. "Yes. He'd had a fight with his father and stormed out. Spent the night on the streets. If it weren't for you, well, it could have gone very differently." Henry didn't know what to say. He stood frozen as Mark continued. "Mr. Whitaker wants to meet you. And he wants to help. Please, come with me." Henry hesitated, unsure if this was real. But something told him to trust. So he stepped into the car. What followed felt like a dream. He was brought to a warm home. Fed a hot meal. Given clean clothes and a room to rest in. The next day, he met Thomas Whitaker himself. A tall, serious-looking man with kind eyes. "You saved my son's life," Thomas said sincerely. "He told me everything. Your kindness humbled us both. And I want to make sure you never spend another night on the streets again." Henry couldn't believe what he was hearing. Thomas continued. "We're offering you housing, healthcare, and a job at one of our auto shops. My son said you used to be a mechanic." Tears welled up in Henry's eyes. It felt like the world had finally stopped turning against him. He nodded slowly, overwhelmed with gratitude. That one act of kindness, giving away the only blanket he had set into motion something miraculous. Months passed. Henry started working again. He was good at it, and his co-workers respected him. He moved into a small apartment not far from the shop and began rebuilding his life. He kept the young man's note in a frame by his bed. A reminder of the night everything changed. But what truly made him smile was that he stayed in touch with Thomas's son, whose name was Daniel. The two became close friends, often sharing coffee and conversations about life, loss, and starting over. One day, Daniel said to him, "You didn't just save me, Henry. You gave me back my father. You gave me hope. I only wish I could repay you." Henry just laughed and said, "You already did. You gave me a second chance. And sometimes, that's all anyone really needs." Thank you for watching.